Welcome back, everybody. Eric here. All right, today I'm going to be reading an op-ed for you, and oddly enough, this is an op-ed written by yours truly. I do have a Substack now, and I'd like to read this Substack to you. It's called America's Love-Hate Relationship with Authoritarianism. Okay, so before I get started, it's just interesting to kind of, make note that, or even Ernest Hemingway himself said that, sometimes the best way to write is just to sit behind a typewriter and bleed. And it's true, I haven't really done a lot of writing, but I've been publishing to Substack, and I enjoy it. I think it's a lot of fun. It's a great way to get some, thoughts out, and I hope that you'll enjoy this particular op-ed. And shameless self-promotion, do follow us over on Substack. It is free to sign up. Doesn't cost you anything. You can, however, become a paid subscriber if you wish to. I think I've got it set to like $5 a month or something like that. You don't have to pay if you don't want to, but if you want to support my writing, you can do it. So I'm going to read my op-ed, and then hopefully I'll be able to elaborate a little bit afterwards. I'll give you some afterthoughts. Okay, I'm going to get right into it. Time will always be our greatest teacher. For those of us who have peered into the details of history involving the bipedal primates that inhabit this rock, it's been painfully clear, if it's one thing mankind loves, it's asserting control over others. There have been numerous books written on the subject of authoritarianism and the concept of governance in general. Is it the folly of the uneducated and unwashed masses who, through their ignorance, ask to be governed? Or is it the evil and deceit of those with ill-placed intellect to desire control of others for personal gain? America is truly a diverse place and a mixing pot of different cultures. Many people call it the Great Experiment, and while I suppose that's true, I would add that eventually an experiment has to reach some sort of a conclusion. It has to prove some sort of data or provide some important insight about a given concept. America has seemingly been an experiment where the rules constantly change, nobody knows the standards, and everyone works in different directions with no common goal in mind at all. I suppose we are all guilty of escaping into our convictions and ultimately worrying about our own destiny and the people in it. After all, America is supposed to be a land of opportunity, a place where good ideas can compete in an open market and earn their place in society, and ultimately to the fame or success of the people who can dream the biggest. Despite our flaws as a society, we've succeeded in that fairly well overall. Where do we go down the road to authoritarianism? And why is it that so many people blindly trust our institutions? Why have some of us diverted off the path of blind allegiance and patriotism with this experiment? It's easy to start blaming people. It goes back to people simply wanting to defer decisions to others. The very concept of governance, to me, reeks of the lack of personal responsibility, individual thought, and critical thinking skills. Growing up in the South in the 90s, times were a lot different back then. The technological advancements, such as the internet, personal computers, cell phones, and a much more connected world, were certainly amazing. It was an exciting time to be a young man and essentially grow up with these advancing technologies. There were very traditional values instilled in many of us despite a fast-moving world. We were told how good things were going to be in the future and that every system currently in place was perfect and would serve us for generations to come. I'm sure they meant well in their indoctrination, but many people in my age range, I'm 38 by the way, generally feel that the 60s generation kicked many cans down the road and that we are now seeing the consequences of that. I was lucky to grow up with technology and a healthy association with the outdoors. I think I can speak for many kids who grew up in the 90s that it was certainly an interesting time. I paint this picture for you because I think it's important to understand the background of some conservatives. We were fiercely loyal to the causes of America. Many of us fought in America's conflicts for over 20 years in the War on Terror. Many of us were sold a lie about the future, a comforting lie that everything would be okay if we went to college, got married, and had a bunch of kids. Everything would be like 1950s utopia, Beaver Cleaverville, just peachy. So yes, some of us are pretty bitter about what our parents taught us. Ultimately, our disdain for authority comes with the comforting lies this generation has been told, stemming from the endless wars, the grift of the educated elite, and the broken promises of a generation who never intended to leave us anything to carry forward. Maybe they intended to, but anyway. As brief as my description was of the snapshot in my time of my youth, America is full of many perspectives and views. I think this is where we can start to look behind the curtain with those that think the government can do no wrong, the people who blindly chose to mask up, the people who think gun control is going to stop crime, the people who think paying more taxes will change the climate, the people who live in fear and self-doubt every waking hour and beg for seconds from the TV screen, who parrots their divisive rhetoric expertly and efficiently. It's a dismal outlook to some, but some of us are experienced. We've learned to see the lie when it's told, and we've been lied to a lot. We know that you only trust what you can witness or participate in rather than blindly trusting what you're told. Admittedly, we are bitter to an extent and tired of talk. We want to deal in solutions. We've seen the landscape change drastically, and we've seen the continued erosion of our rights and freedoms. We've seen the devaluation of our currency steadily from the time we were kids. We've been down the same old roads we grew up on in Atlanta that have the same famous potholes in them that have been there for 30 years. Yet, some hold on to the notion that the government will fix things, that they can do no wrong. Anything a person says on TV must be true. I strongly believe that the bulk of society is just misinformed. It's possible that people legitimately don't care about the future or just trying to live and survive day by day. I believe it's strongly possible that there are many good people out there with good intentions that have just been given bad information. Until we remove the cognitive dissonance people have about the government's likely intentions, nothing is going to change for the better. It's just going to be a constant chipping away of our sovereignty, our rights, and ultimately the entire view of America we were sold as kids. There may even be no America left worth saving. While that's a defeatist point of view, eventually you have to realize that Rome is burning. The institutions aren't worth saving. Our current government makes a complete mockery of our very process for passing laws. They think you are all moronic tax cattle that they can milk to the last drop. After all, you'll just have more kids, right? More meat for the war machine, more candidates for their indoctrination camps, and more willing participants for their involuntary grift that never ends and doesn't have any other goal than enhancing the wealth of government officials. This is the disconnect between society. Some of us are playing out Plato's allegory, and others are trying to watch the sunrise on top of the hill. I remain cautiously optimistic that things will improve and we will heal the clear divisions that exist in our country. The geopolitical landscape doesn't look promising. The world is making a mockery of the United States and its leadership. The saber rattling has never been louder or more dangerous. We are at a crossroads where if we continue to be led by weak people who don't hold the ideals of our founders true, we're going to wake up in a place that isn't America anymore. It could be too late to go back, and that's a sobering thought for sure. We eventually have to ask ourselves if we desire survival and being at the top of the world stage, or if the modern phenomenon that is interconnectivity and social media proves to us just how unalike we really are. Are those differences so extreme that we would rather worry more about hurting each other's feelings than buckle in and be the best versions of ourselves? Would the Founding Fathers approve? Likely a dubious proposition at best. So my intention sort of is to really leave a lot of questions open-ended. I really want the reader, the listener, to kind of draw their own conclusions about how they feel on these particular matters. All I can do is lay out how I feel about certain situations, about my lay of it, the way I look at it, like my view on it. But I can't put the thought in your mind. I can't force you to think a certain way. It's not my intention to force you to think a certain way or to even influence you to think a certain way. I think that a lot of feelings and thoughts have to really come from inside. And the only way that can truly happen is for you to truly question your beliefs. And if you're not willing to question your belief about what you've been told, about the lies you've been sold, about the military-industrial complex and all of the things therein, if you're not willing to at least have that conversation with yourself and question your own convictions, you're never going to change your mind or perspective for the better on anything anyway. So there's no amount of preaching I can do about the where, whys, and whatnots of something like this subject. I just thought it was an interesting thought process, maybe to put some of you in the mindset of, really taking a moment to look back and have a little bit of retrospection about, how things have gone over the last 20 or 30 years for some of you that are old enough. And maybe some of you that are young enough may not understand what some of us have gone through in the last 20 or 30 years in this country and why our outlook tends to be sometimes so freaking bleak. It's a scary proposition. It's a scary idea. It's a scary concept. If all you've ever known is that you love the United States of America and it's all roses and patriotism and all of this, star-studded, star-spangled, red, white, and blue fanfare of patriotism and love and affection for the place you call home. If that's all you've ever known, well, then obviously it's painful sometimes to go, well, is my lady really my lady? And that's sometimes a difficult pill to swallow, to understand that, it may not be quite so cut and dry anymore. And that's a scary place to exist in. It's a scary conclusion to come to realize that, maybe in some cases we are the bad guys. You know what I mean? And sometimes you got to realize when your country's making a bad choice, or call them out when things aren't going the way that they should be going. I think that true friends call out their friends. Like, they call out each other when mistakes are made. Like, hey, you're making a mistake. You need to fix this. You need to correct this. So do you really love something if you're not willing to correct it? If you're not willing to call out its transgressions? If you're not willing to, admit that the flaws are there and try to correct those flaws? Do you really love something if you don't want to correct it? I guess that's really where we're at. I mean, and some people eat it up. There's people that, the whole Karen complex, they love to assert some form of authority over somebody, whether it's calling the cops or getting into somebody's business or trying to come up to somebody at the gym and complain about you or say something about you, or you're on an airplane and they want to complain. It's somebody somewhere has always got to put their 2 cents in and get their nose in somebody else's business where it don't dang belong, right? Some people in society, they feed on that drama. They feed on the idea that there is a system in place that they can exploit to get their way and to exert their political views and their proposed moral views against you. And then there's another group of people who, maybe they've been on the inside of the machine. Maybe someone served in the military and law enforcement and saw, maybe behind the curtain from the inside and saw how bad the situation really was from the inside, or saw the complete lack of humanity that people within the system had for their fellow citizens that they're supposed to be protecting, that they're supposed to be serving, that they're supposed to be beholden to, that they just have such a cold indifference about the job that they do that it just becomes a job and it's not even about the people anymore, that it's actually done more in spite of the people than it is for the people. And after a while, I think that those two things become at odds with each other. And I think that there's definitely folks on all sides of the equation, but it's scary that we live in a country now where people, what happened to the left hating authority? Like, think about it. Right? Look at old school punk rock, it's all against authority. They hated authority. And now you look at all these, woke musicians that are supposed to be punk rock guys or rock stars and stuff. And it's supposed to be anti-establishment, anti-authority, anything that's against freedom and against personal freedom. They're supposed to be against those institutions. And now it's they're just completely taking the government dole all the way. And it's just strange to me. It's like a complete reversal on the way society used to be versus what it is now. And it's like the roles have reversed. It's like things just kind of change gears a bit. And it's a weird time to exist. It's a weird time to be in this country. At the age that I am, I feel like it offers kind of a unique perspective. We're not necessarily in the boomer category where we're super, we're not in our 60s and 70s or anything like that. And we're definitely not, like some of these people in Congress that are super old and everything like that. I'm not saying that being old's a problem, but after a while, you got to look at leadership and go, there's a dozen, 15, 18 of y'all that are ancient and y'all can't possibly understand what we're going through at our age. And you can't possibly expect us to adhere to your decision-making processes that you're not even going to live long enough to see the negative ramifications of. So it's just kind of, I feel like my perspective and kind of where we're at in our age group and our society, we grew up with a healthy relationship with technology, and we saw those changes in technology, and we saw it coming, but we also stayed true to our roots, and we went outside and rode our bikes and went fishing and hunting and did stuff outdoors. So I think keeping yourself grounded in that way is something that society has really lost. All these younger folks, all they know is this phone and this iPad. And of course, because of what I do here on the channel, I have to interact with technology a lot. It's okay, but it doesn't consume me. You know what I mean? And we've just gone down a very difficult path. And I think authoritarianism is just a cog in that wheel. And I think it's a dangerous place for us to admit that we're comfortable going to. I don't agree with somebody utilizing force or coercion or anything against somebody they don't like just because they have the ability to. I wouldn't want somebody to do that against me, so I'm not going to turn around and try to exert some form of authority against another person just because they have a way of life that I may not agree with, but it doesn't mean that I think that's right still. I still wouldn't use it against the people I dislike or disagree with. I'm kind of a live and let live sort of guy, and I think that I want to think that more people think that way, but it's like sometimes the writing's on the wall and you have to see it for what it is. So whatever you take away from this, just understand that it's not that we don't love America. It's not that we think that Rome is burning necessarily. It's just that we don't want to see it get to that point. And, I know we all have different ideas on how those things are accomplished, how we move forward, how we progress in a way that is still, meaningful to the way we were founded and our Constitution and our way of life and our conservative values, but still embracing the fact that the world is a modern world that is interconnected and much more intertwined with each other's business. And because of all the interconnectivity with social media, there's got to be a way to find a way to make all of that work in conjunction and still honor the past and still embrace the future and do it in a way that is lawful and constitutional and logical. I don't really think that's a lot to ask for. So thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you sign up for my Substack page. It is free if you want to sign up. If you'd like to become a paid subscriber, I would really appreciate that, but don't feel like you have to. There is a discount if you want to do a whole year. You get a good break if you want to sign up for a whole year. But I've been releasing a Substack. I'm trying to do 2 a month, but it's probably going to be 1 to 2 a month. Every couple of weeks, I usually release them on Sundays. So I'll get behind the computer and I'll write on Sunday. So thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed today's video. That's been the Substack for today, America's love-hate relationship with authoritarianism. So thank you so much. Many more videos on the way. We'll see you soon.